This is Jared with MetalsPeak.com. Today I'm reviewing the latest release from Blood Red Throne. This is a self-titled album. It was released on May 17th through Sever Red Records. On the brutality scale, I give this album a 9 out of 10. Over the course of their career, Blood Red Throne have built a pretty impressive catalog of really groovy, chunky death metal, and their latest self-titled effort is no exception. Pretty much every song on this album is a face smasher. The album's opener, Soul Seller, starts with a nice build, and by the 41-second mark bursts into a hair-whipping, chugging groove that lets us know that they're not fucking around. The rest of the album pretty much follows suit, save for Primitive Killing Machine, which features a more hardcore chug and a bit slower tempo than the rest of the tracks, but is no less sinister. The music here isn't super technical or over the top, crazy heavy, but as death metal goes, this is about as meat and potatoes as you're likely to get. On the songwriting side, I gave this an 8 out of 10. I picked up on this band back in 2005 when Altered Genesis first came out, and I've always counted them as amongst my favorite death metal acts. In fact, I thought their 2009 album, Souls of Damnation, was just utterly brilliant. I think what made this band stand out from the countless other acts in my collection was really their ability to nail down a great groove and apply it to a death metal song in a way that didn't slow things down or detract from the song's punch. There are so many moments on albums like Souls of Damnation or even Affiliated with the Suffering where I was just constantly turning my head and just completely blown away by what they were doing. With this album, it doesn't really grab me the way the others did. In fact, there's a few times on the album where it's a little obvious that they've taken a few too many cues from the Cannibal Corpse playbook. That isn't to say that the songwriting album isn't completely bereft of any groove or ingenuity. Tracks like Soul Seller, Primitive Killing Machine, Torture Whore, and Dodden's Macht are really fun to listen to, but overall it just feels like they're having a hard time topping their old work, in my opinion. On the production side, I gave this a 9 out of 10. Production on this album is really solid. One thing I've always enjoyed about the way they mix their albums is that you can actually hear the bass being played. It's not simply being used as just another piece of distortion to thicken up the sound. The bass strings are getting hit right behind the guitars, so you can really hear how well Ole plays his instrument. I'd say there, if I had one gripe with this album, it's on the vocal mixing, and it has more to do with the high pitched screams when they come through. For some reason, they kind of jump to the front of the mix to me and kind of drown everything out when they're happening, and it's kind of annoying when that happens. Not that I mind high pitched screams in metal, but for some reason they seem extra loud in the mix, and it just kind of grated on me a little bit. But other than that, everything's really well balanced and really well put together sonically on this one. So on repeat listenability, I give this a 7 out of 10. I listened to this album several times with the intention of reviewing it. I think the jury is still out on whether or not I would listen to it with the same veracity and enthusiasm with which I listened to Souls of Damnation or even Altered Genesis. I've probably listened to it a lot more than I've listened to a lot of stuff this year, but there are parts in the album where my attention begins to wane a little bit. I just kind of start drifting off and thinking about other things. I'll likely pick out my 3 to 4 favorites, like the ones I mentioned earlier in the review. But as far as a regular front to back listen, my reaction to this album is just kind of meh. For the artwork and the layout, I gave this a 7 out of 10. We only received the digital copy of the album, so I've only seen the cover art. The cover art features, wait for it, a throne that is red and covered in blood. Overall, gave this album an 8 out of 10. On the whole, the Blood Red Throne self-titled album is a competently written and played death metal album. There's definitely some great stuff going on here for fans of old school chunky death metal. With this go around, the band have definitely turned out a solid album, but as far as kind of outdoing themselves against their past efforts, I think this one kind of falls short. Hopefully, maybe they'll pick up their game a little bit on the next album, but overall, this album is really solid. So if you like the old school chunky type death metal, definitely check this one out. Thanks for listening.